Welcome to the Let's Talk Sports by the Lake, episode 4. I'm here with my co-host, Julian Howell. How are you doing today, Julian?
I'm doing great, Jake. How are you doing?
I'm doing well. It's a beautiful summer day, and we're here to talk about some of the happenings in the NBA. What do you want to start off with, Julian?
Well, we can start with the NBA Finals. The Golden State Warriors beat the Cleveland Cavaliers in 5 games. And something to note is Kevin Durant's dominance throughout the series. He averaged 35 points, about 8 rebounds, and 5 assists. So he was just really dominant. He really wanted that first ring so bad, and he got the Finals MVP, which was so well deserved.
I agree. I think he played phenomenally throughout the series. I think he really put the Golden State Warriors over the top. Unfortunately, to beat the Cavaliers this year, the Cavs, they have a lot of work to do. LeBron James averaged a triple-double in the NBA Finals. He did everything that he could to put the team on his back, but they didn't have enough firepower, and they didn't have enough defense to guard Kevin Durant. As you said, he averaged 35 points a game. KD just really wanted that ring, and that's why he came to Golden State. So I think that's what they needed for them to be that much more dominant in the series.
Yeah, I agree. But I think it was also the Cavaliers' bench play. I mean, no one really showed up. No one ever scored in the double digits off the bench. And we didn't really see anything from J.R. Smith nor Tristan Thompson, so just very discouraging. But, the season's over, and do you expect to see the same teams in the finals next year?
I personally do. I think it'll be interesting to see if they both can make it back for the 4th year in a row.
Oh, yeah.
Obviously Golden State is up in the NBA Finals series 2-1 over the Cavaliers. But yeah, I think honestly, it'll be both teams coming back. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens in the free agent offseason.
Yeah.
And we'll talk about that here in a second, but I honestly think there's not going to be anybody other than maybe the Celtics that compete with the Cavaliers in the East, and maybe the Houston Rockets in the West. But I think it'll be a rematch once again.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think in the Eastern Conference, the Celtics are really the only competition to the Cleveland Cavaliers. Maybe the Washington Wizards. They've certainly been in the race every year. But I think it's mainly the Celtics because, they could be players in free agency this year. We'll get to that later in the show. But I think it's the Celtics in the East who can compete against the Cavaliers. But in the West, it's really wide open because you have the San Antonio Spurs, the Houston Rockets, and the Utah Jazz improved a lot last year as well. There's a good chance that Gordon Hayward might leave the Jazz in free agency this summer.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. Let's talk about the NBA Awards show. It happened last night, hosted by Drake, of course.
Yeah.
They announced all of the NBA awards for the 2016-2017 season. Of course, the MVP of the league, as we called in our first episode, was Russell Westbrook.
Yes.
He averaged a triple-double throughout the season. And he just really took over the league this year. He put that team on his back. As we both had discussed prior to this, he was really deserving of that MVP trophy.
Yeah, I definitely agree with you. If Russell Westbrook had not have won the MVP, there would have been a lot of problems because he's the first one to average a triple-double in a season since the 1961-1962 season when Oscar Robertson did it.
Right.
And he really deserved it. He put the whole team on his back. Kevin Durant left for Golden State last summer.
Let's talk about some of the other awards. Rookie of the Year was Malcolm Brogdon.
Yeah.
And that really took everyone by surprise because he was a second round draft pick. I think he was the first in the live ball or in the recent era for the NBA. He's the first second round draft pick to win Rookie of the Year.
Yeah.
Defensive Player of the Year was Draymond Green from the Golden State Warriors.
Yes.
And the Most Improved Player is
Giannis Antetokounmpo.
Antetokounmpo. Okay.
I got it right.
I think you did too. So it was a nice way that they had all the awards together. They had a very good show.
Yeah.
Is there anything else that really surprised you from any of the awards?
I mean, so I before the award show, I was kind of skeptical about the whole idea of there being an NBA award show, because usually for the awards, for any of these postseason awards like the MVP, Defensive Player of the Year, or the Rookie of the Year, they usually would do it in front of the media at the winner's team, if you will, or like at a press conference type of thing.
Right.
Like you remember Kevin Durant winning a few years ago.
Yes. Yep.
It was at a press conference, so I wasn't really sure how it would go, but it ended up being a really good award show, and I really appreciated it even more when they gave Bill Russell the Lifetime Achievement Award.
That's awesome. Yeah, he's well deserving of that.
Well deserving. He won 11 NBA championships, and he was also an outspoken advocate for civil rights. And it really says a lot about him as a person, and it kind of showed. I mean, he was really brave to be an advocate for civil rights at that time, because there was a lot of division in the country, a lot of hostility, and he was brave enough to say something about it. And I feel like athletes like him and Jim Brown don't get a lot of credit for being the advocates they were for civil rights, even to this day, you know.
Right, and they are the ones who really paved the way for civil rights and for for having African Americans in different sports, whether it's the NBA or the NFL.
Yeah.
That's really important to not only those sports but our community, our society. Let's talk about the NBA offseason.
Yeah.
As you know, there have been several trades this offseason, starting before the NBA draft. The first one being a swap of two of the higher picks in the draft with the Celtics and the Sixers.
Yeah.
The Celtics were sent their first pick overall to the Philadelphia 76ers for the number 3 pick and a future first-round pick.
Yeah.
What do you think about that trade, Julian?
I think it's really interesting because the Sixers had number 1 overall pick last year, and they drafted Ben Simmons. This year they drafted Markelle Fultz, who should add to a young nucleus for the 76ers. And I really think the 76ers are one of the exciting young teams with Joel Embiid at the center position, Ben Simmons, and Dario Saric, who are the forwards.
Right.
And so really just an exciting young team. And the Celtics, they've risen back to the top of the Eastern Conference. And I think they have Isaiah Thomas, they have Al Horford. They should be players in free agency this year. And so they're really in a good position.
And they drafted Jason Tatum. With that third pick that they received back from the Sixers. So
yeah.
I think it worked out for both parties. I think they're both going to be young, exciting teams again next year.
Yeah.
Also, another trade, Dwight Howard went to the Charlotte Hornets. Another trade, Brooke Lopez went to the LA Lakers.
Yeah.
And another draft day trade was Jimmy Butler going to the Minnesota Timberwolves. So the Chicago Bulls finally pulled the trigger and got rid of Jimmy Butler to the Timberwolves. What do you think about that trade?
I was really surprised that they made the trade, because Jimmy Butler is one of the best two-way players in the whole NBA. He's probably the second best after Kawhi Leonard. So I was kind of surprised that the Bulls did this, but I think this shows that they're in rebuild mode. And I guess they're starting over again. And I think Jimmy Butler deserved a fresh start somewhere else. Not that it went bad in Chicago, just that they were definitely in rebuild mode. And I think he adds to a really young core of Karl Anthony Towns, Andrew Wiggins, and Ricky Rubio, who's a good point guard, really good at passing. His shooting percentage is not good, his shooting percentage can make anyone cringe, because he's not really good from the field, but
Right.
he gets everybody involved, so.
Yeah, I think he's a good facilitator.
good facilitator, and yeah, they have a good young team going forward, and maybe they'll make the playoffs next year.
Yeah, I think they really have enough talent. They just have to come together. That core of players just has to learn how to play together. I think they definitely can make the playoffs. And an incoming trade that just happened, about an hour ago? Chris Paul has been traded from the Los Angeles Clippers to the Houston Rockets for a first-round pick and 3 other players. So you see a lot of these big names. They're moving situations. They're moving teams. What do you think about that Chris Paul trade?
Well, I mean, I think it's a good trade because you get Chris Paul, one of the best point guards ever. But I was kind of shocked because it seemed like James Harden was the point guard for the Houston Rockets last year. I mean, you look at the stat line, he averaged 11 assists per game. And I mean, he and Chris Paul can definitely play together because James Harden definitely can play off the ball as well. So I think it's a good trade. The only problem is that Chris Paul only has 1 year left on his contract. He opted in to his contract
for 1 more year.
For 1 more year, so there's a lot of pressure to get something done this year in terms of progress as a team. Maybe going to the NBA Finals, challenging the Golden State Warriors. So yeah, we'll see what happens, but I think it's a great trade, though.
I think it is a very aggressive trade by the Houston Rockets. I think like I said, they gave up 3 players and a first-round pick for Chris Paul. But I think that shows to not only James Harden and their fan base that they are ready to win now, and they're willing to do what it takes to get the players that they think they need to succeed with.
Yeah.
Let's move on to the NBA draft. Again, we discussed the trade with the Celtics and the Sixers. Sixers drafting Markelle Fultz. They have a very young team. And the Celtics drafting Jason Tatum at number 3 to add to their playoff roster. So number 2 was the Los Angeles Lakers with Lonzo Ball.
Yeah.
Magic Johnson made his first pick as the president of the Lakers. And do you think that the Lonzo Ball era is going to start off well for the Lakers?
I mean, I'm not really sure. I mean, we all know who Lonzo Ball is because he had a great freshman year at UCLA, and for his father, LeVar Ball, who's been making a lot of comments in the media about his son, saying his son's better than Steph Curry, asking for a $1 billion shoe deal, which he changed to a $3 billion shoe deal. And
oh, man.
So he's got a lot of media attention, but I think he'll fit well into the Lakers organization with his excellent court vision as a passer. He's a good rebounder as a guard, pretty good scorer, so I think he'll definitely fit into the Lakers organization. And a lot of people compare him to Jason Kidd based off what he can do. That's a huge comparison. But yeah, we'll see how it goes.
I agree. I think if he can have a career similar to Jason Kidd, the Lakers would be tremendously happy with their selection at number 2. A lot of people say that he's Jason Kidd with a better shot. And, and that's, if he can still maintain his shot in the NBA, I think he's going to be a great player for years to come.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, I mean, he has a really good three-point shot as well. I mean, his release point's a little low, but yeah, it's definitely deadly.
I agree. Anything else you want to touch on the NBA draft? Any surprise picks that you didn't think were going to be made and it happened?
Well, I want to talk about LeVar Ball for a second.
Okay.
I'm not too much about LeVar Ball, but so after Lonzo was drafted by the Lakers, LeVar Ball made the prediction that the Lakers will go to the playoffs in Lonzo's first year. And I hope Lonzo has a great career and hope he's successful, but it could be a lot more difficult than it seems, because there's a lot of young teams in the West, like the Timberwolves or even the Phoenix Suns, who have Devin Booker, who's a really good two-way player. Great shooter too. He dropped 70 points this year.
Yeah, he did. That's crazy.
Eric Bledsoe is a good point guard, and they drafted Josh Jackson, who's a really good two-way player as well. Needs to work on his offensive game, but he's getting better. We saw that at Kansas last year.
Yeah, I agree with you. I don't think that the Lakers are going to make the playoffs this year. I'll be surprised if they do. But as we all know, that LeVar Ball likes to talk. Last thing we're going to talk about in the NBA is what to expect from free agency going forward. We touched on Gordon Hayward a little bit. Blake Griffin did opt out of his contract with the LA Clippers, and you have some bigger names like Paul George potentially on the trade market right now. Paul George isn't a free agent until next summer. You have Carmelo Anthony potentially being bought out of his contract with the Knicks. We just got word today that Phil Jackson and the Knicks are parting ways. And there's also rumors out there that Dwayne Wade might be bought out by the Miami Heat. So it'll be an interesting offseason for the NBA. It'll be interesting to see where all of these big name players end up by the start of the regular season in October. Anything you want to touch on in regards to any of the free agents or potential buyouts that might happen?
Well, so I think a really interesting free agent to watch is Gordon Hayward. He was drafted by the Utah Jazz in 2010. Right after a season of Butler where he took Butler to the NCAA championship against Duke. And he's gotten better every year as a player. He's a really crafty offensive player. He's a great shooter. He shot almost 40% from the three-point line. He can drive to the basket, so he'll help any team on the offensive end. And a really intriguing story is that his former coach, Brad Stevens, is the head coach of the Boston Celtics, so maybe Boston is a destination for him this summer.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if he wants to reconnect with Brad Stevens and maybe make that Celtics team even deeper coming into next season. Welcome back to Let's Talk Sports by the Lake. We're going to talk about the NFL now. There's been a little bit of news in the offseason. The biggest thing right now in the news is Derek Carr and his new contract with the Oakland Raiders. What do you think about the new contract, and how do you think that can help the Raiders going forward?
Well, yeah, so let's talk about the details of the contract really quick. So It's a 5-year contract, $125 million. So he'll get roughly $25 million a year. And as we've seen, since he was drafted in the league in 2014, he's gotten better every year. You look at the whole stat line, his passing yards have gone up, his yards per attempt have gone up, and his interceptions have gone down. So he's definitely a player who's on the rise. He's gotten better every year. And if you look at any mock redrafts, like where they say how an NFL draft should have gone based on what we've seen so far, you'll often see Derek Carr going number 1 to the Houston Texans. And looking back, I don't think they did that because they didn't want to take a PR hit because his brother, David Carr, his career didn't go so well with the Houston Texans. And I think it's really interesting because in the NFL, I think when quarterbacks get paid, it really depends on the quarterback market at the moment. And it also just depends on who's in need of a contract.
Okay. And who do you think the next quarterback to receive a lucrative contract is going to be?
Well, I think it's going to be Matthew Stafford for the Detroit Lions, or maybe even Kirk Cousins for Washington, because they're both players in the last year of their contracts. So maybe we'll see them receive contracts very soon.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see. As you said, the quarterback is one of the most important player on your roster in terms of leading your team to victory. So, I think Derek Carr has obviously earned his new contract with the Oakland Raiders. It'll be interesting to see if he can keep those stats going in a positive direction in the next couple of years. So mini camps, they happened in June. Mid-June. So most of all the teams have had their mini camps already. Training camp begins at the end of July through August. So it'll be interesting to see. There's always a lot of injuries in training camp. There's always a lot of roster changes and new emerging rookies coming out that are really making a positive impact on their new teams. So look forward to some updates on that at the end of July and early August from Let's Talk Sports by the Lake. But that wraps up our NFL segment for today.
Yes.
Welcome back to Let's Talk Sports by the Lake. We're going to talk about baseball now. The baseball season is in full sway right now. The Yankees were started out hot. They have the best rookie right now in Aaron Judge. Is he going to be the best rookie ever, Julian?
Well, I think so because I know Joe DiMaggio scored 29 home runs back when he was a rookie for the Yankees, one of the all-time greats for the Yankees. And Aaron Judge has 26 right now, so
wow,
he'll shatter that record.
Yeah, I really think he's gonna. I mean, wow, Joe DiMaggio had 29 home runs as a rookie. Aaron Judge has 26 in June.
Yeah.
I mean, we're only in June, and he already has 26 home runs. I think that really says something. He has, 60 RBIs already?
Yes, he does.
I really think he's on pace to break all the rookie records and to become the best rookie of the year ever.
Yes.
It's a really exciting time to be a Yankee, although in the past 14 games they've lost 11 out of 14, so I think some of their youth is catching up with them. Obviously their pitching staff hasn't been the greatest. Tanaka's struggled a lot this year. You have Severino pitching really well, but I think really their pitching staff just needs to get on par with their hitting, and I think they'll be okay. I think they'll be playoff contenders for sure. Currently they sit in second place behind the Boston Red Sox. So the Yankees really started off hot, but it'll be interesting to see how they do for the rest of the way. You can see the bullpen 6.32 ERA.
Yes.
They've walked 32 since June 13th, and that's just really not going to cut it. Their bullpen has 14 blown saves already this year. It's just really not working out in terms of a pitching standpoint. So hopefully Aaron Judge can continue to hit monster home runs and carry them along the ways. Another rookie. Do you want to talk about Cody Bellinger? He's really in the National League set the stand for Rookie of the Year over there.
Yeah, well, Cody Bellinger is playing really well as well. He has 24 home runs so far. He's hitting almost a 300 almost a 300 batting average, and he has almost 60 RBIs. So he's playing really well for the LA Dodgers, who are in the NL West, and it's a really competitive division this year.
Yeah, I agree. I think he didn't have to play right away. They didn't even know when they were going to call him up this year. But due to Adrian Gonzalez's injury at first base, they called him up to play some first base. He played extremely well then. They moved him to the outfield. He's still playing great in the outfield. Now he's back to first base. So, with almost a 300 average, hitting 24 home runs already, we're not even to the All-Star break. So he's having another, great rookie season there for the NL West. As you mentioned, the NL West is a tight race right now. There are several teams in the running. The Diamondbacks, the Rockies, and the Dodgers all are within about 4 games of each other. Who do you think is going to win the NL West this year, and why?
Well, I think it will be the Dodgers because of Cody Bellinger, and also they have Clayton Kershaw, who many think is the best pitcher in the MLB. He has a sub-3 ERA. So he's playing like we expect him to play.
I agree. I think it's going to be the Dodgers. I think they've really started on a hot streak right now. They have great pitching. They have a really deep pitching staff. They got Alex Wood. They got Clayton Kershaw. Kenta Maeda. They have a ton of great pitching, but they also have a ton of young great hitters. So you have to have pitching to go deep in the playoffs. But it'll be an interesting NL West race this year. Of course, the All-Star break's coming up here in about 2 weeks. But I think there's been a lot of exciting news in the baseball world lately. So
yeah, definitely. I think between Aaron Judge and Cody Bellinger, we'll have a home run race.
Yeah, we will. We certainly will.
Yeah, we really haven't seen that since the 90s when it was Mark McGwire and Sammy Sosa.
Yeah, those were exciting years. Those were exciting years back then. When Mark McGwire was, breaking all the home run records, and then later on Barry Bonds breaking all the home run records. So, it's bats have been hot this year. It's interesting to see how times have re-evolved back into a hitters league. But yeah, it's an exciting time for the MLB and all of the teams. And that about does it for our for episode 4 of Let's Talk Sports by the Lake. Again, my name is Jake Bartko, and this is my co-host Julian Howe. We'll see you next time.